Hi, everyone. My name is Sean Massey. I'm the America's VP of Sales for ArcServe. Thank you so much for attending our second segment of Beyond the Arc. This won't be any type of sales pitch, but rather a discussion on industry trends and how those trends affect our customers and our partners. For over 40 years, nearly 150,000 customers and 35,000 partners spanning the globe have trusted ArcServe to strengthen their data resilience, recover lost assets, and ensure business continuity. Our discussion today is focused on a timely topic. Given that Memorial Day weekend is approaching, why is there always a spike in cybersecurity threats before holidays and long weekends? And how should we approach, prepare, and protect for the short and long term breaks away from the office? Before I get started and all that, I just really want to say once again, thank you to Aftab Alam, who was here for our inaugural Beyond the Arc last week and or last time. And since then, as I've been reflecting on that, last segment was revolving around why all data is not created equal, right? To be able to do that, and really the purpose of making sure that we identify the 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 whole importance of specific data and making sure that our data protection, business continuity plans, all of that really kind of go around that. So I'm going to kind of start there for a moment. And over the years, actually, ever since I got into IT, there's always been a common drill that has been just really impressed upon me. It's the 3-2-1 method of backup and recovery, right? As we kind of think of it. And the 3-2-1 was really the standard for years and years, right? As the gold standard of making sure what to do in order to protect the data as we go through there. But over the past decade or so, maybe a little bit longer, we've really uncovered that 3-2-1 is not necessarily the the gold standard anymore. In fact, it's inadequate in many ways. So I'm going to start there, and if you just give me a moment, I'm going to share my screen, and I'm going to talk you through 3-2-1. But I'm going to also suggest to you that really we have another one that we would add on to it. So it's a 3-2-1-1 method. So before I do that, let's go ahead and just talk about what 3-2-1 is. So the number three really equates to how many copies of the data. Now, there is it is a little bit open to interpretation here. So on whether the first copy is the production copy or not, but in this case, I'm going to talk about that. So the copy number one is the production copy, and then we will certainly back that up, and that will go to another location, right? Just within the environment. And then we'll have a third copy that happens to be there. So the three is three copies of the data. Two is two different types of media. And so what we kind of mean by that is, in my past, being working for a solution provider, can't tell you, sometimes walking into an environment and they would say, "Oh, hey, let me show you this brand new SAN. We've got we're really excited." And what they've done is they'll carve out part of that SAN will be running all their virtual machines, and then they'll carve out another part of that SAN to be the repository for their backups. That's a no-no, right? So that's the same type of media. So we want really our because at that point in time, what we're talking about is the production data within the virtual machines running on the same piece of equipment for the backup, right? So if you lose the SAN, you've lost your production data, you've lost your backup data. So that's two. So we want to separate that out. So we want different types of media for the production machines that are running, and a different for the backup. So we got three copies of the data. We have two different types of media that we're writing to, right, that we're utilizing. And then the one is to make sure that we have an offsite copy, right? So we're able to do that. So for years and years, what we're doing is that 3-2-1 was really designed around all of the natural disaster events that might occur. So that we're talking about fire, flood, tornado, hurricane, tsunami, earthquake, that whole gamut. Because in this sense, if you're practicing 3-2-1, you'll always have your data somewhere that you would be able to recover from. However, as you look at this screen, we've got now a kind of a new world with ransomware, and ransomware has been around for at least a decade. I know it's longer than a decade for sure, but it's really ramped up over the last few years. So what happens, and I'll tell you, this is something that's been documented, certainly by the Cybersecurity Infrastructure Security Agency, or CISA. CISA has documented that there is an uptick, certainly, in ransomware activity just prior to holidays or long weekends, right? And so let's just kind of take you through that scenario for a second, and we're going to apply it to the 3-2-1 world. So in a 3-2-1 world, and we're heading into the U.S. holiday of Memorial Day, for this weekend, right? So many people will choose, they have Monday off, but they want to get a little extra um, time off, so they'll take off Friday also. So often we'll have fewer staff that are running on Friday, right? And so then what happens is the bad actors that can be sitting on that network, all of a sudden in the afternoon, folks are leaving early to get a jump start on the weekend. That's when they can go ahead and drop their payload right on the network, and it can start encrypting. So when it starts encrypting the production machines, right, backups are being taken, and that encryption then ends up getting into the backup files, and then we're replicating offsite, and that encryption can actually go then into that offsite sense too, right? So in a 3-2-1 strictly world, as you're doing that for data protection, it is quite possible that by the time people come in on Tuesday morning, their production machines are completely encrypted. It has encrypted has that encryption inside the backups, but also the bad actors often are looking for that backup repository to get at that and encrypt that. And then they look at their offsite data, and their offsite data also has that encryption. So that makes it really, really difficult, really, to recover, obviously, right, to be able to do that. So enter into the 3-2-1 world, and that extra one is really important. And so what we're doing with the extra one is we're getting to a point where we are actually adding either immutable storage or an air gap system, right? So the immutable storage is just like it sounds, right? So if something were to attack, like a share that is sitting on immutable storage, even though it might look like it is encrypted, it actually hasn't touched the actual data, right? There might be revisions of that data, and that those are all read only. And so then you would be able to represent that share, specifically from a prior snapshot to be able to do that. We have a term, actually, and this term was coined, certainly way back in the tape days, of WORM, which stands for write once and read many, WORM, right? Write once, read many. And with the worm drives that were there, you would be able to take the backup off of the tapes and then go off site, but you could never overwrite those tapes, right? It would not allow you to do that. That over the years, that phrase, that worm acronym, has been expanded now to immutable appliances, right? So to be able to say, yeah, to demonstrate, we have it from a logical standpoint, we're able to protect that data, and we're actually never overwriting it. So that way it truly is immutable to be able to do that. Immutability, of course, is nice and quick, because as you can see on the graphic here, the immutable storage is on the local network. And so because it's on the local network, it allows for the quickness of restoration. Another acceptable method of protecting folks in a ransomware world is air gap. Now, air gap is, you think of air gap as like your traditional tapes, right, to be able to do that. But air gap often, while you have that data that's sitting, off-site somewhere, that's not connected to the internet, it's not connected to any network, right, and it's kind of locked away in a safe environment, it does have some drawbacks. And there was one piece where maybe a couple years ago, I was on site with one of our sales engineers to one of our largest customers, and I would say they're probably in the Fortune 100. And we were certainly talking to them about immutable storage, but in this case, they were describing to us their air gap process. So they would had about 640 to 680 terabytes of data that they were backing up. And then what they would end up doing is they would back those terabyte off to tape, write them to tape, and then take those tapes off site. However, it would take them 3 weeks in order to write all of that 600 and some terabytes off to tape. 3 weeks, right? And then once that went off site, then they would start that process all over again. So with the air gap solution, often folks, it's a manual process. It has, a high intervention on it. And then the speed of it, especially if you needed to come back to restoration, if you had to restore all that 680 terabytes of data, may take a while. So that's why it kind of started with this, because that notion from the very first Beyond the Arc, where we talked about not all data is created equal, is identifying what is the most crucial data and being able to roll with that. So I'm going to switch gears. So that's really kind of the setup really for the the risk that we have entering into holiday weekends or entering into long weekends like Memorial Day, the U.S. Memorial Day that's happening in a couple of days. So what we're seeing really is often those holiday weekends are understaffed, right? The teams just aren't there like they would normally be there. And I'll tell you, about 90% based on a survey of cybersecurity professionals are concerned about long weekends and are concerned about those particular areas, and they have reason to, right? Back in 2021, and it was certainly also in the middle of COVID, Colonial Pipeline, if you'll remember, out in the southeast area of eastern part of the U.S. or southeastern part of the U.S. Became compromised on Mother's Day, and during that segment, it was a cybersecurity piece. It hit a limited number of machines, but at the time they did not know exactly the extent of the infection of the payload, right? So they ended up shutting down their whole system while they could go through and evaluate everything that kind of went through that. That caused actually gas prices to spike enormously back at that time to be able to do that. There was another incident that happened also in 2021 over Memorial Day weekend, right? So we're coming up on the anniversary of that. And JBS, which is one of the top meat suppliers, certainly in the US and possibly beyond. In fact, for those that know me, I live in Green Bay, Wisconsin, and there is a big JBS presence here in our area too. But that meat packing, when they got hit, they were forced to pay $11 million in ransom. And when you kind of think about that, and I'll tell you, I'm a big barbecue guy and I like to smoke. Certainly that had a huge impact on that company and everything that's there. But immediately, when I was going to make my own bacon, and I would go to Costco to find instead of being $1.99 a pound, it was 2 and 3 times higher than that, right? So certainly it affects not just the company itself, but it has a kind of a cascading effect that goes down and all the way down to the consumer piece to be able to do that. And then finally, one last story that I would give you is there was an IT company called Kaseya that was hit with a major ransomware attack back in 2021 again, but at the start of the Independence Day holiday, the July 4th holiday, being able to do that. And what that vulnerability did was actually going in. Kaseya was being used by many, many solution providers, and when that got compromised, then it actually gave access to those solution providers too. So it was a massive, massive ways to be able to do that. So, today, just briefly as we kind of go through there, I've kind of set up the need, right? We have a need in order to protect ourselves. We need to have a heightened sense of awareness as we head into these particular moments of long weekends and holidays where we don't have as many people in the office, or don't have as many people working and that's monitoring everything. So we need to make sure that we're doing some things to help protect ourselves and to help us to keep going along with that. So what should we do? What we should do is a couple of things. Number one, dust off that disaster recovery plan. Make sure that everything is updated, make sure that it has been tested, make sure that it's all well documented as you're going to go through that. A very good tested disaster plan is very, very important should the unthinkable occur and you do get infected by that. Train your team, right? Train your team, train your users. And in doing so, what you're doing is being able to monitor when things all of a sudden um, start not to feel right, right? Just like I think everyone in the states would say, they're very familiar with, if you see something, say something in regards to airports and security. That's also has to happen within our network. So we want to make sure that we are looking at, if there's something unusual that's happening on the network, or if you're trying to get into applications or folders and you're not able to do so, we need to make sure that we're training our users and our teams to make sure, hey, we're sounding the alarm, because fast action can actually reduce the effects quite considerably. And then we need to make sure that, and this is really kind of more of a longer plan. It needs to be well thought out and implemented, but looking at identity access management, limiting the access that folks would have to that network, and making sure that users, when they're doing it, they're required to provide multiple verifications. As we've seen, as I've seen and talked with customers in particular that have been hit by ransomware in particular, often folks will be on the network at the time, and if they're on the network, they're waiting for that special time, and part of it, they've compromised some type of user account. Well, if you had, multi-factor authentication installed, that could be a layer, right? Nothing is ever that silver bullet, but what we try to do is do layers on top of each other, so that way we make it much more difficult for the bad actors to be able to do that. And so this multi-layered approach really allows, I mean, it goes from all of your edge strategy, and then it goes into your processes, and your processes might be, there are solutions out there where you can create your own phishing emails for your employees and see, who actually falls for it, right? And then that's an opportunity for training and to help develop it, because the better the acumen of the users is, the more secure network that we're doing it. And then finally, we want to make sure that we would recommend that you choose a resilient and proven IT investments, and that is going to be that seamless integration between cybersecurity, between data protection, between disaster recovery and immutable storage, that whole gamut. And we need everything needs to be able to be working together. So that's it for today. And really, thank you so much for your attendance today. Please have a good, safe, long weekend this weekend, and I hope you have a lot of fun. But please make sure that you are protecting your networks as best as you can as you head into that. Protect what's priceless, but remember, data resilience doesn't just happen.